All right, today my guest is Steve Cox, the surfboard golf pro, I like to call him. One of the most technologically advanced golf teachers on the East Coast. Steve, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for that introduction, Terry.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, tell us about where you're working these days and who you're working with.
Yeah, so I've been at PGA National Resort for the last 5 years. And after this whole pandemic, we've shifted, myself and another instructor have shifted out to a place called PGA National Estates Golf Course, which has its own 18-hole championship course and practice facility. And they used to host a skills testing center for elite athletes on the PGA, LPGA tour. And that's been opened up to us to now take our pre-existing player development programs and actually add another dynamic to it, which is unbelievable because it's in scenario testing that a lot of golfers don't get when they're just hitting on the range with their instructor.
Steve, you're one of the first golf pros at a club like PGA National that I've ever met that was using a lot of technology at your hitting bays down there at the Bear Pit, right?
Yeah, Bear Trap, sure.
Bear Trap. And I mean, you've ran into these golf pros just randomly, and they knew about you, and they would come down to the Bear Trap and take swings, and almost informally start use technology. How did that all work out exactly? Like, you've sent me some amazing clips of people just randomly using pressure mapping on BodyTrack and 3D systems, so on and so forth.
Yeah. Immediately, this was probably back in what, like, you guys were kind of getting going around 2013 or so.
Right.
Or maybe it was before that, but I started to kind of get into it around 2014. I started watching some of your videos that you were posting online. I was like, this guy's got some thick skin. He's throwing himself out there. I love it. I want to hear more. So for me, I grew up, basically boarding. I do a lot of kiteboarding, a lot of windsurfing. You have to feel everything in your feet. So if you're on a snowboard, I mean, there's nothing else connected to anything except the ground. And you're feeling that pressure change underfoot while you're skiing, while you're snowboarding, while you're surfing. Especially, I picked up hydrofoiling, which is now a combo, and we can get into that if you want, but it's a combination of understanding proprioceptively where your center of mass is and your center of pressure. And yeah, go ahead.
How did you, like, that's really why I started the intro the way I did, is because I've only surfed a couple of times when I was a young man in Hawaii, but I loved it. And the balance required for boarding reminds me of that. When you're golfing, you're always going back and forth. And of course, based on the water conditions, you're always shifting. But if you don't got good range of motion in your feet, if you do not have good range of motion in your feet, you probably can't board very well. And I would suspect it relates to golf.
Yeah. It's for me growing up, balance was second nature, because if you wanted to have the extracurriculars that I pursued, you had to be balanced. You had to be functional. And I started translating that into golf, because for me, what I feel in my feet, there's go-to shots for me that I just feel in the arches of my feet. And obviously there's more dynamics that come into play, posture and hand path and all the fun stuff that golf pros talk about. But it really comes down to the foundation.
You talk a lot about balance when you're working with your players, but you're also a massive fitness guy in terms of strength from flexibility, stretching.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm really as I'm not built or anything. I'm not going to the gym and lifting a ton. But I'm a huge advocate of stretch menus. I'm a huge advocate of aligning your load-bearing joints. I feel like in another life I was a chiropractor. It makes so much sense to me that golfers should be aligning themselves and not having these these tilts or depressions throughout their body, where they fold up like an old accordion while they're swinging a golf club. And that to me equates to longevity of playing this game.
And so how does proper ground control, in your opinion, relate to lining up the joints correctly?
Well, one must go right over the top of another. It's almost like a perfect H throughout your body. When I'm standing up straight, I want my ankles to line up with my knees and my hips and my shoulder socket, which would then equate to somebody not having curvatures in their spine or rotations in their pelvis or tilts in their pelvis. And when you actually have somebody that statically sets up to the ball correct, they're feeling, again, proprioceptively where they should be versus where maybe they think they should be. And to me, that's an understanding of your surroundings and where the club is supposed to move.
So is it fair to say that if you have good proprioception in your feet and you've got good range of motion in your ankles, you're putting your body into the proper, allowing your body to get into the proper dynamic position with the least amount of tension in your throughout the upper part of your body? Or how would you word that?
Yeah, that's I don't want to make it, again, we're kind of generalizing a little bit here. You know, I'm not here to try and make a bunch of blanket statements.
Right.
I want to make sure that everyone understands that they're unique and individual in their own way. So, you know, for me, if I get somebody in a proper position, what I would consider a functional position at address to a golf ball, if it is not functioning properly as they're swinging, that's a dead giveaway to us. So if I put you in a position and you are feeling extremely uncomfortable, likely your muscles in a certain area are stretching differently, and we're feeling something. Our nervous system is now, you know, translating this to our brain and going, wait a second, I've never felt this before. So it's my job to kind of open up people's eyes a little bit. You know, I had a couple guys, they just graduated D1 collegiate golf. They're playing mini tour golf down here. One of the brothers, he just won twice this week on the mini tour. He's playing in the Punta Cana PGA Tour event later this year. And, you know, here's a guy who's shooting 65, and we get him on the mat, and he starts understanding, you know, maybe my pressure trace isn't as clean as I thought it was. Maybe my footwork isn't as clean as I thought. That doesn't make him any less of a player. It
Right.
just makes him understand that functionally I can even move better than I already am.
Right. So you mentioned that everybody's different, which is true. I mean, obviously our physiologies are all different, but maybe this is a bit edgy, but have you ever seen a tour player that's won on tour, or somebody that's winning on a mini tour that did not have a linear trace in their irons?
Yeah. This kid this week, he's 22, 23 years old. I mean, he shoots 65 in his sleep, and he had extreme backup. And, you know, that doesn't make him a bad player. All I tried to relay to him was an integration of how the pelvis moves a little bit better. And all of a sudden his pressure trace cleaned up. It turned more into that kind of swirl looking trace rather than a full back up to his trail foot. Like
Right.
it almost looked like he was hitting his irons with a Z trace. And, you know, the ball flight was a lot lower when we got him linear. So the trajectories changed, the spin rates changed, and all of a sudden he was still hitting the ball where he wanted to, but it had a different reaction with the club face.
So, and I'm not trying to steer this, but so you had a squirrel trace, kind of a Z trace, but
Z trace to start. Yeah, Z trace
Z
to
trace to
start.
start. Got him to hit
More of a swirl once we had more of a, all we really did was just kind of pronate the trail ankle a little bit more towards impact. So it made it a little more linear in the pelvis.
Right.
And it made his transition kind of clean up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I've seen that. I mean, I'm blown away by how fast you're able to make impact changes with touring pros. But I remember, I think it was Scotty Hamilton that told me once that the easiest guys on the road to work with in the world are the touring pros.
Yeah.
Because once they see that information on the BodyTrack, they're not dumbfounded, but they say they almost get competitive and they want to get that to where
Oh,
you recommend it to be.
these guys, the mindset's insane. They're going, well, wait a second, I'm not perfect. I'm going towards this goal, and it's quite amazing to see that competitive nature even come out in something on a computer screen. So, as for what Scott said, I totally agree with him. The easiest job for me is teaching a racehorse how to be fast. I'm just the jockey on the back, right?
Yeah.
So it's really easy, to take a great player and show him how we can clean up functional motion a little bit better. And all of a sudden, we start talking about path of least resistance again.
Yeah, exactly. Path of least resistance, being optimal as well as you can with your pressure, so that your body can be free to do what it should optimally do on its own. Talk
100%.
to me about you're the first guy that I've worked with, that you're the first pro that I've worked with that really started to study the vertical forces. I mean, there's a lot of people looked at it. A lot of people started talking around about it in 90 in around 13 and 14. But
Mm-hmm.
you really had one client that was a kind of an amazing vertical force fellow. Maybe you can talk about that, Tommy.
Yeah, the funniest conversation I think I've had, was with you. I got all of this software and we started measuring vertical forces. This is like what, maybe five years ago or something.
Right.
Um, and I get this kid, he shows up, if you don't know who Tommy Morrissey is, he's a phenomenal junior golfer. He's one of the best in the state of Florida. And he was born without his lower right limb. And, he swings with his left arm only, peers the golf ball. We don't know if he fully understands what he's doing all the time or not, but it sure as heck works. And we started measuring, right? It's my job not to necessarily be his golf instructor. It was never that. It was to measure, understand, and then try and support. So for me, it wasn't directive; it was a supportive role, and we found out that he was pushing off the ground uh, probably more pound for pound than anybody else on the planet. And I remember calling you, Hash,
Yeah.
and being like, "Your software's broken, buddy.
Yeah.
You gotta fix this." And you're laughing. You're like, "No, no, we've seen this before. I swear
Yeah.
we've seen this before." And it was a adaptation of that limb missing that allowed him to learn how to push off the ground harder.
So, I mean, I get into these debates all the time, and I'm not saying I've won them, but I don't think I've lost them. I don't see how there's a direct correlation between vertical force and distance. Now, in Tommy's case, there seemed to be one. Like, he had high vertical forces, and pound for pound, unquestionably, he was hitting the ball further than anybody on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your take on vertical forces and correlation to distance?
Yeah, you know what? Everything in moderation. Number one, I always try and live off of that one.
Yeah.
Um, but everything's relative to time, and if you're applying a force in the wrong time or wrong direction, then yeah, I don't care if you're pushing off the ground 10 times your total mass.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So okay. So a friend of ours, I think you've met him, Richard Hughes, from the UK. He
Yeah, I
recently,
know, I know who he is. Yeah.
yeah, and he like yourself, you guys use the swing balance multi sticks for
Hmm.
acceleration deceleration
Yeah,
training,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I find
absolutely.
very.
Absolutely. Yep.
So talk to me a little bit about braking, because he's not the first guy to talk about braking. I think maybe you and I were actually, because we talk about the release factor, time from when you brake on the lead side to impact, very critical in determining what your sort of distance will look like. You can have a soft brake, but if it's at the right time, you can maybe hit the ball pretty far.
Yeah, it's a fantastic drill. You see so many tour players doing that exercise now on the range,
Yeah.
where they hold the shaft in the center
Yeah.
club in the middle of the shaft, and you see them with a split grip and having that club head oscillate as they come down. And that's usually a translational move while the club's working up and back at the same time. So their arms and their hands are working in a proper way, but they're also shifting in a linear sense to their lead foot faster. And
Right.
that braking, I do an exercise where I try and have my junior swing as fast as possible without having to hit the golf ball. How close can you get to this ball without hitting it and swing as fast as you can? And
And
so,
just stopping.
and stop right before you hit the ball.
Right.
But we're learning how to load those hands up just like we're learning how to shift our pressure early.
I've seen a lot of neat drills on this, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody do it better than you. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that because, I mean, there's a large group of people my age and older that just simply don't. I'm not going to go to the gym. I mean, not just because of COVID-19. I don't want to go to the gym. But I'll do a little bit of work on the swing balance bars, and I'm not trying to give that a plug. It's just that they flex and they're easier and softer to work with. So tell us some of your techniques, if you don't mind, without sharing your secret sauce as to, what you can do for older fellows like me and ladies and even young kids who may not be so strong, but, just want to learn how to break properly. Go through that a little bit if you can.
Right, right. So for me, um, the biggest flaw I see with a lot of guys, it could be younger players as well, but we're talking the older crowd here, but um, we see the pelvis not working as efficiently as it could.
Like rotationally?
Ro- Um, Actually, if you're talking all three planes of motion here,
Yeah.
usually the rotation happens really quick and early, and it makes the trail hip go very high into impact. Kind of like if you had somebody coming over the top and their
Yeah.
right shoulder goes high as well. And so for me, I'm trying to, in transition, I'm trying to get these guys to feel like they can maintain that dynamic posture. And that is hands down the hardest thing to do. So I love using these bars. Like you said it yourself. I love feeling that oscillation at the end of that multi-stick.
Right.
That feeling um, is teaching that older student what shallowing of the club actually is. And if you don't like the word shallow, what it's doing is it's widening the swing circle. And when you widen the swing circle, you're creating more of that proper rotation and that proper positioning of the centerpiece of your body. And that allows, again, path of least resistance.
Right. Right. So the one thing that you and I have always talked about, or talked a lot about, is why the driver traces are so different than the iron traces. And but the more I look at it, and the more I study it, it's just that the margin of error for a driver is the full width of the fairway,
Mm-hmm.
and the margin of error hitting the 7-iron to a 160-yard pin is like 20 feet.
Yeah.
So they have a higher margin of error, and they can the distance between the line going back and the line going through can be greater, but they've got a 40-yard wide area to hit it to,
Sure.
and the hands compensate a lot. What's your thoughts on? I mean, Bob Tosky very well,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
he's a hands guy. I mean, so is Jim McLean. I mean,
He's,
you've worked with them all. What's your feeling one way or the other here? Hands to be or hands not to be?
I'm a huge advocate of hand path and grip pressure.
Okay.
So we'll add that in there. The one thing, without getting too deep into kinetics, with it, when you start adding loft to a club, you're taking away curvature from the ball as well.
Right.
So everything still is relative there. Um, but as for how the hands work, I'm a huge advocate. Like I said, I was a multi-sport kid. If you gave me a ball and a wall, I'd be occupied for 12 hours during the day. So for me, it was hand-eye coordination through and through. I had no idea what the heck I was doing, but I knew it worked. And I'm
So
trying to relay that message to my junior elite golfers right now is you
so
guys aren't doing enough feeling with your hands. go outside, play catch with dad for once.
Right. Do something a little different that rewires the brain as to get better hand-eye coordination.
More. Um, maybe I had ADHD before it was ADHD. I don't know. But I was out there constantly feeling with my hands, my fingers. I was a free throw champion growing up. I felt everything in my fingers, and it was amazing. Actually, somebody mentioned to me when I was a kid, and I was like a 90 plus something percent free throw shooter. I was like 96, 97% free throw shooter. And the thing is when I got into that zone, I wasn't even looking at my target. I was feeling what the ball was doing coming
Right.
off my fingers. And that's what I'm trying to promote to these kids with a golf club.
So is it fair to say that even with respect to free throws, because I mean, I'm not a big basketball guy, but I understand it. If they've got good balance in their feet at the proper position, that it allows them to free up so that they can think about more, in that case, the feel of the ball in their hands.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
You need to have the proper posture in your feet, wouldn't you say?
You're setting parameters.
Yeah.
Got a question. Yeah, go ahead.
So Ben Ball is a competent golfer. He's new. He's our new marketing manager for BodyTrack Sports, BodyTrack Golf, I should say. And what are some of the ways that you would get Ben to use BodyTrack at home if you were if you obviously haven't seen this game, but what are some of the things that you would get Ben to do at home with BodyTrack?
Yeah, the easiest thing is just stand up straight on it. Just go stand on it.
Swing? Get a linear trace?
I mean, let's start with just standing upright. Where are you? Are you actually standing 50-50, 50-50? Are you in your right heel and your left toe and is 160-40 and you don't even know it? For me, it's how can you use this device to screen your player without even having them swing a golf club? Just to start.
Right.
So I'll have somebody stand up. They'll have their club in their hand, but they're standing straight up and down. And they'll look down and they'll go, geez, I had no idea I was 55-45. I feel like I'm 50-50 right now. And for me, when you see more heel or toe pressure on one side, there's likely a rotation in that pelvis, or there's some type of depression in their shoulder line as well. And people wonder why they have misses.
And so you know, one thing a lot of people don't know about you, your company is called Elite Performance down in West Palm Beach. Is it West Palm?
Yep.
And I've been there many times. I just forgot the name of it. It's kind of confusing for me when it's in West. Yeah. You use BodyTrack a lot to screen people before you tell us how you came up with this strategy, because you're the first golf pro that I've met ever. Mm-hmm. Including just ever, that began to look at BodyTrack as a screening tool as opposed to just a training tool. Yeah. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, it's efficiency. It always comes down to path of least resistance. If you are vertically aligned and there's no asymmetries throughout your body, we typically have proper function and the proper amount of mobility and stability throughout the body. We call that you're a condition deluxe. And we don't want to be condition 1, 2, and 3, which is all sorts of kittywampus postures. And when I see somebody who is duck-footed and rounded in the thoracic walking towards me, I'm going, geez, I don't even know if I have to put this person on BodyTrack, but we're going to do it anyways. And we're going to see if they're actually rotated a certain direction. Because listen, I don't have my doctorate. I didn't go to school. I don't look at people and automatically see exactly to what nth degree their pelvis and their shoulder line and everything is rotated or tilted. But when I get them on BodyTrack, it's very obvious that I don't need that doctorate. They can see for themselves.
Right. Now, this is Ben's going to take these little interviews and make pieces out of them, and then he'll give you all of this stuff too for your own use. For
you'll make me look good, right, Ben?
But I'll try to. It's hard to make Terry look good.
But yeah, I'm not worried about me. But but like Steve, this is only the second person I've talked to. I talked to Jake. I mean, I've been with Jake 100 years.
Jake's, Jake's the man.
Well, that's not the man, but he's my buddy, and you are my
Jake's
buddy
the man.
too.
Come on.
So I want to. I only got 17 more minutes here, and I want to ask. You kind of blew me away a lot when we first met you at one of our seminars at the PGA show 5 years back or whenever. You were there. You didn't look the way that a normal golf pro historically looks. I don't either. So that's not a shot. What I meant was you looked young, different, vibrant. I knew right away that you had 1,000 questions to ask Satchel.
Yeah.
What have been some of your discoveries since using BodyTrack that you can share with people that are going to listen to this?
Sure. Number one, and listen, Terry, this is a lot of borrowed information from conversations between you and I.
Absolutely.
And, one thing, and I'll just tell you what I agree with. I agree that linear traces are the most efficient route, hands down. Straight lines are always the fastest way to get somewhere. And that, to me, is a very simple way of looking at the golf swing. If we just keep our straight lines, just like posture, straight lines are the way that we feel the best. It's when you make crooked lines that the ball starts spraying all over the place. And guess what? Our joints aren't aligned. And that means our muscles are stretching on one side more than the other.
I think the friends that I've got in the golf business, and I hope you allow me to call you one of them, we all agree on one thing. We want to have risk-free golf as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like I'm 62. Like COVID-19 is forcing me very little options. You drink or you golf pretty much, because what are you going to do? And then I better start taking golf more, and I don't want to hurt myself because I don't want to, but I don't want to be short either. If I can only hit the ball 230, 240, I mean, screw that. I don't want to play. And I need to have that dynamic posture to be clean so I can swing hard. And the only way I can sense to do that is just to keep the balance as evenly as I can on both my feet.
Yeah, well, you said it yourself. It comes down to, am I balanced or not? Let's just make it that simple, Terry. Am I balanced or not? And if you're not, well, yeah, there's going to be compensations in your swing. And those compensations can, not saying they will, but they can lead to injury. And it's my job to keep people playing. The moment somebody gets hurt, I tell all my mini tour guys this, my collegiate guys, the moment you're hurt, you're worthless to me. It crushes me to say it, but it's true.
You've done a lot of work with some of the longest drivers in the world. Can you share some thoughts there with us? Then maybe you can tell us the names. I mean, you've worked with some of the biggest hitters in the world.
Yeah, there's a couple guys. The guy that I really like is Ryan Winther. He was, I think, 2014 long drive champ. He was down in the Bear Trap with us. That was actually when Tommy Morrissey was there as well, and they were having a vertical force challenge between the two of them. And, pound for pound, Winther's got to be built like a linebacker. He must be like 250 or something. And this guy is pushing like 2+ times his total mass off the ground. That's a lot of poundage. So, he's crushing it. But I think if you want to know what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at long drive guys, I'm thinking of negative linear velocity. I'm not looking at the positive peak. I'm looking at the negative peak and certain timing of when that's happening.
Because negative linear velocity. Okay, science. What am I talking? What am I doing here? What's linear?
You've got your velocity chart, right?
Right.
And you typically have a peak going up on the long drive guys.
Right.
We could use Justin Thomas as an example, right?
Yeah.
You're likely going to see a positive peak, and then you're likely going to see a mirror image of a negative peak as well.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I got you. So my theory on that was it's as long as you can be backing up, but as long as the pressure is moving forward in and around impact, you're good. Because that means your center of mass moving forward.
There you go. So a lot of the time it's that pressure built up pushing backwards creating a certain spine angle at impact, right? So we're looking at that spine angle, and then that's creating that positive angle of attack into the golf ball.
Okay, so why not just use more loft?
Spin.
Okay. All right. So take me down that path. I don't want. I'm okay. I'm scared to go down this rabbit hole, but
I know, you're crushing me.
but take me down. The Ben's looking at me and thinking, "What the hell are you talking about, Hashimoto?"
Yeah. Well, think dynamic loft. Do we want more dynamic loft or less dynamic loft when we're hitting the golf ball on the way up? Well, if I start adding dynamic loft and I hit up on the golf ball, you're going to have a non-optimal launch, and you're likely adding more loft to the, more spin or revolutions of that golf ball. And so there are parameters. We talked parameters earlier. We have to keep within that cone of certainty.
Talk to me a little bit about transition. I mean, like, some players, some coaches think they're a backswing coach. Some people think they're a follow-through coach. I mean, there's so many different types of theories in this golf world. I find it sometimes frustrating.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've learned over time is that you're a big supporter of counterbalancing pressure transition. What's your thoughts about going to counterbalance during the backswing, getting pressure into the heel?
So for me, I'd say the most efficient route that I try and get my players to do, and I'm just talking pie in the sky figures here.
Yeah.
I love to see if I can get the hand path to match the pressure trace.
It should.
And when it does, it's when the body moves the most efficient. Hands down. When you have that proper flow, and you and I talk pressure flow all the time.
All the time.
When you have proper pressure flow, matching a hand path that creates that same efficient flow, that body is moving really well.
We it's the most oversighted, it's the most neglected part of pressure mapping is the flow of energy. It's got to be clockwise to be optimal.
Otherwise, you're hitting the brakes, buddy.
You're going to the brakes. Yeah, I mean, it's such an understated statement. If you're clockwise, you're accelerating in an optimal manner.
Yes.
If clockwise, counterclockwise, like you said, you're hitting the brakes. Steve, share with me some of your thoughts about using BodyTrack and pressure mapping for short game, like lob shots, putting, stuff like that. Because I've seen you do that a lot.
Yeah. The putting's tough. I'd love to get more of an embedded mat. Now, you sent me a really cool mat, and I obviously I still have it. I use it specifically for putting, and it's about paper thin.
Right.
And I'm saying that fabric was awesome. I love that idea. You could roll it up, and then you're not elevated. But the one thing I do like is if, let's say I do have the BodyTrack and I have a student standing on it and you're elevated, whatever that number is, your feet are elevated above the ground. I love the idea of the leading edge of that club matching up with the center of the ball as well. And it just kind of gives them a picture in their eyes of, hey, why does Ricky, why does a few other players, why do they hover the putter, bounce the putter before they take it back? And it's just releasing tension. So you're actually using the pressure mat not only to see if the player's shifting, underfoot, you don't want any lateral motion or anything like that. It's a thoracic motion. It's a trunk rotation,
right?
Or an arms and hands motion. But, these guys are bouncing the club, they're lifting the club, they're hovering the club, they're taking tension out of their hands, and grip pressure is the number one thing that I'm looking at when people are transitioning their putter.
From soft to firm?
Soft to firm, you're saying in grip pressure?
Yeah.
I would say soft all the way through. When you apply grip pressure in transition, you create a loop.
Yeah, you move the putter head. Yeah, you create. So let's talk about the future here a little bit, Steve. I mean, you're moving to a new facility. We're working on a consumer-based model where people can go to your facility, rent the BodyTrack, see the software on their phones and work on it after they've been in consultation with you and know what they're looking for. Tell us your thoughts there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's it's honestly what's missing on every driving range at the moment. I don't mean BodyTrack specifically. I'd love to see that. I think that goes hand in hand what I'm talking about, and I feel like driving ranges are missing that ambiance of
Yeah.
what a real golf course is, and that's separation. So I love when I show up to a driving range and there's dividers. And it's not because I just want, John Smith to stay away from me. It's
Right.
that I prefer a safe environment. And when you put that pressure mat down on the ground, you are saying to the consumer that this is your station. This isn't anybody else's space. This is your space. I'm here to learn what I'm here to learn. I'm here to hit golf balls. And, here in Jupiter, when you're paying $12 for a bucket of golf balls, I'd prefer a little more ambiance. I prefer my own spot to train and think and not have some guy who randomly wants to swing really close. You ever been to a driving range and all of a sudden a lefty comes up to you?
Definitely. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, it's almost like your 9-irons are going to kiss.
I hate that. No, face to face is not too bad, but when they're back to back to you, just feel, it's awful. But where I'm going with this is that we think that the future of like the other day I was out of town and I was going to hit some balls, but there was just, it was just a range of balls. It just didn't have the gusto that I'm used to now because I'm hitting balls in studios. I'm hitting balls with my own launch monitors, my own pressure mats.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like it's kind of like playing the back nine of a very boring course on a long, hot day. Not that exciting.
It doesn't hold much, does it?
No, nothing there.
I'm not into going out and banging balls. Like when you've got your own lab and you can see everything. And not only that, you're probably hitting, performance golf balls, and you get to a driving range and there's barely a dimple on the dang thing.
Well,
you don't know what's right and what's wrong.
Let's talk a little bit about that because one of the notions that I have that we haven't really gone over too well with Ben and Kyle yet, Kyle works with Ben, is that when you work with BodyTrack and a launch monitor too would be great.
Yeah.
But you don't have to spend as much time beating balls. You can get to the point quicker.
If you understand how to read it, so it really comes down to the PGA professional or whomever you're working for or with. It's their job to explain to you what the easiest way to understand this data, to interpret this data. And if you have a very specific goal in mind, and it's, hey, I just want to be 60-40 on this wedge shot every single time, and I want to be 50-50 from toe to heel. Let's just make it really simple and basic.
Yep, right.
And they have the ability to get into that position. And I have to feel like my mass is shifting a little bit more this way to get it done. Again, we go back to feels. And we go back to just actually quantifying feels.
Steve, a lot of guys still in this business think they don't have to use technology to teach. And maybe some people don't if you're teaching, the grip, the stance, the setup, the backswing and downswing. But once a person has got even the most modest degree of golf skills, don't you think it's more effective for them to have technology in their lesson structure?
I'm trying to think who said this, but the point is, if you're not measuring, you're behind.
Yeah, that's
listen, because if you're not measuring, then it's just subjective. And listen, some guys are great. Their opinions are better than others when it comes to results.
I have a few more minutes. I want to nail this down for you because you've got some incredible ideas out there, Steve. I say this sincerely. Everybody that I'm talking to on these Zooms are people that I've been blown away with by either the way they operate, their knowledge, and usually a combination of all of the stuff that it goes into teaching and coaching. And we know there's a difference between the two.
Yeah.
What would you want to? What's your future here in golf? What do you see the future of golf lessons, coaching, so on and so forth?
Yeah, Titleist started with this, 15 plus years ago. Functional motion is really where a lot of it's at. There's a lot of other dynamics to the game, such as mindset and being competitive in nature. And, some guys just have it, some guys don't. But it's our goal to train that. But if I'm asking you to do something that you are physically just non-responsive to, it's like I would think of golf as I'm driving a car with flat tires. Eventually you're going to get into an accident, right? And that's how I think of golf when I'm not functionally moving properly. So for me personally, I went through a lot of hell internally to get myself to move better, to hit the ball better, and now I understand myself. I understand my game better, and now I'm relaying that message to my students.
So you're using BodyTrack in a lot different ways than just golf. You're using it for functional motion screening as well. I think you're a leader in that.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the you've shared with me some of the ways that you're using it. So at your new facility at PGA National, is that correct?
Yeah, PGA National Estates, yes.
So you're going to have full screening capabilities, full body assessments capabilities.
Yeah.
And that's as much for the player as it is the teacher, so that they can understand what their limitations and capabilities really are.
Yeah. There was a quote. It's not my quote, but I read it the other day. I should be trying to teach myself out of a job. The moment I love that quote, I was like, that is so me, because I've had guys that I've watched, and you're like, they go on and on. I sold this 10-pack of lessons, but I'm only going to give them the golden nugget till the 10th one.
Yeah, right.
That guy, I'll give it to him in the first 10 minutes.
Solution-based teaching is what we think is the future, and that's what we suggest.
Isn't that amazing? It took this long to figure that out.
Oh, it's been out there. I mean, you and I have talked about this.
Okay.
Steve, you're and this is a BodyTrack Zoom, so I'm going to ask you selfishly, what's the number one best thing that's happened to you using BodyTrack in a lesson?
The number one thing that's happened to me using BodyTrack in a lesson. That is an awesome question. Give me 1 minute. Give me one minute, because I'm thinking in the back of my head all of the different times where I thought I knew the answer. And sure enough, it was the exact opposite.
That's crazy.
Every time I use something such as BodyTrack, and I believe that my eyes are telling me the truth, we go and we quantify. We go and we measure, and believe it or not, my eyes are getting better, but they're still not as good as I wish they would be.
Trail heel down's the only thing I've ever seen that can give me a hint that maybe the guy is linear. Stephen Cox, you're the first person to ever use BodyTrack on a NBC worldwide stage.
Yep, HBO. We did HBO as well, and we're going to keep this going, man. We're going to do a few more shows eventually here.
Tell me how nervous you were doing that show. Do you remember what you said when you were on there talking about BodyTrack?
Well, it was, listen, I don't stand in front of a crowd of people very often and speak. And, I hadn't felt those nerves in a long time. I remember sitting behind stage, and all of a sudden, sure enough, they call my name. I walk out on stage. I'm looking out there going, wow, there's about 300 people out there. And it was funny. It was like I turned the lights on, but like I just subconsciously kind of put it in autopilot, and I just started talking. and it's amazing what comes out when you just let things happen.
Isn't that the purpose?
And if you have thick skin and you don't care if you made a mistake, then it's no big deal.
Last question, Steve. Last question. Have you ever thrown BodyTrack on a surfboard? I've seen those surfboards that you do.
You tell me if we can get a waterproofing housing for it, and I will do it in I will do it in a heartbeat, because that's exactly what I was thinking of when I saw this thing the first time. I'm going, geez, if I add a little too much toe or heel pressure on my surfboard, I'm going for a swim early.
Stephen Cox, PGA National Estates Golf Course, and I can't thank you enough, Stephen. It's been an honor to have you here. This was really good, really cool.
Yeah, you're a good friend, Hash. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Ben, I'm sorry I got to jump, but we got a lot of good stuff there, guys.
It's all good. Yeah, no, it's perfect. Thank you so much.
Awesome. That was
fun. He's going to cut that up a little bit, and he'll send you over whatever that you need. Get you the links.
Yeah, whiten up my teeth a little bit, and No worries. Ash, I appreciate it, buddy. And Ben, nice to meet you.
You as well. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see ya.
Yeah.